Welcome to The Crown of Courage. For the previous 5 episodes, we've heard Ethel's amazing story. We'll go in studio now and hear what Ethel has in store for her future. So over the last 5 episodes, we've heard so much of your story, and it's an incredible story filled with oh wow moments and even a couple of jaw drops.
Sure.
Why is your story so important? Why did you choose to tell your story?
One of the reasons why I made a decision to tell my story is I wanted to know that I could live through the story. I wanted to know that my life mattered. That's one of the major reasons. Did my life matter enough to tell the story? Who would be interested? And not only that, I needed to know that I could have a story about life, live through life, and help other people on their journey. That was a major key for me, is to help others that may be going through a journey and they were stuck.
The people at Kennedy Austin Foundation that hear your story, they are probably as wowed by your story as I am. Their stories are probably just as traumatic. What kind of reactions do you get when you share your story?
Most of the people that hear my story, it's almost like they can't believe it. I think a lot of people want to know, when you've been through trauma, when you've been through tragedies, when you've been through disparities, you have this outlook, or maybe I should say you have this attitude or something to that magnitude. I think when people look at me and they hear my story, they go, wow, if you could get through a story like that, then so can I. And that's one of the major reasons why it's vitally important to tell the story, because a lot of times people look at you, they have no idea what you've been through, and everyone has a story. Everybody.
Your story is, by anyone's account, sad. Yet in the times that we've talked, I see smiles on your face. I hear joy. I see you interacting with the clients at Kennedy Austin Foundation.
Sure.
How did you get to that point of joy?
You know, what I had to do was I really had to tell myself, it's what I've been through, it's not who I am. And I had to work through that process, because sometimes the story becomes you. And then you keep reliving and reliving and reliving. I had to convince myself, this is my story. It's what I've gone through, but it's not who I am. And I could live through it, get through the trauma, get through the things that I've been through, and still have a full life, full of joy.
Who are you today?
Today, I am a woman on a mission. I am a woman with passion, a woman with vision. I'm a visionary leader. I'm an author. I am a woman that feels empowered by tragedy. I feel like I'm a woman on a mission to be able to help other people on their journey, tell their stories. And it's rewarding. As bad as it was in the beginning, it's just as rewarding now.
What's rewarding about it? It's tragedy.
It's tragedy, but it's also a part of life. Life is full of tragedies, but you turn tragedies into triumphant events in life. I feel like when I look back in retrospect at my story, it is tragic. It's very tragic. But when I see myself now, I'm so thankful that I gave myself permission to come through it. And I did that. And that is where triumph comes from tragedy to triumphant. That's who I am.
Your story is, I mean, it is a story that is the thing of movie dramas.
Mm-hmm.
It really is a story. The very first time I heard it, I didn't know how to react. It was, do I cheer this woman on? Do I cry? Do I sit there and just take it all in?
Sure.
And it has power to it, and it has a sense of direction that I think even the storyteller didn't know about as things were happening.
Mm-hmm.
How did you find your direction?
One of the reasons that I had a direction was because I wanted to be very clear of the narrative. I wanted to be vitally clear of the narrative. I wanted my story to be told in the first person. I wanted my story to be told with the passion, with the intensity, and with the drama. I wanted people to know and to see and to experience. And that's one of the reasons why I had to be a woman of courage to tell it just the way it was in the first person.
We talk a lot about courage. In fact, the name of the show is The Crown of
Yes.
Courage. Describe for me, if I was coming into the Kennedy Austin Foundation, how would you teach me to find my courage?
One of the ways that I would instruct you, not teach, instruct, was to watch. Be very mindful of watching people. Watch body language. Watch how people adjust to you. Watch how you adjust to others. I would tell people to be very watchful, very mindful, and pay attention. Pay attention, because there are things that we could see and we're just not paying attention. We don't see it. We don't see the real properties of it. We just see what we want to see. When people come into the foundation, I tell them all the time, put on your spiritual ears, put on your spiritual hat, put on your spiritual compass and watch. And that's what they do. They watch.
Your spiritual hat, your spiritual compass, those are unusual words
Sure.
for a lot of people. If somebody comes in and doesn't have I won't say religious, but somebody doesn't have a spiritual background or doesn't really have any experience in that,
Right.
how do you draw them to that?
I can tell you in the most honest way that I can. The Bible says, with love, you draw them. And that is the most powerful entity on the face of this earth. With love. They don't have to have a spiritual compass. They don't have to have a spiritual background. But if you are showing people unconditional love, that's a buy-in. That's a tie-in right there.
That is a fantastic idea. People that have never been loved before, people that have been in abusive relationships,
Sure.
people that misidentify love. How do they react when you welcome them with that unconditional love that you provide?
Sometimes people will react in ways that they go, are you real? Is that for real? And so sometimes people have to literally take it in, and the next day they're back and they watch. And the next day they're back and they watch, because they want to know that what I'm getting and what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing is real. And so I try to be as authentic and as transparent as I possibly can. And sometimes I will find myself walking around with our workshops, and sometimes just a touch just a human touch, a human acts of kindness goes a long, long, long way. But that's exactly how I navigate through that.
I met a couple of your daughters a few weeks ago. They are definitely your daughters. They are filled with such a positive energy, such a desire to serve. They talk about you and they just light up. Was it always like this? Your daughters, some of your daughters experienced some of the early trauma in your life. Was it always like that for them? How did they get to that point?
I think they got to that point by watching me. And they watched me very carefully. They were like a watchman on a wall, very overprotective, very mindful. It was almost like our roles had reversed. They were parents and I was the child because they didn't believe that I would come out of it the way I did. So they were very, very protective. But we have conversations about life. We have real conversations about things that are going on. And once they got that security, that confidence that she's going to be okay, they adopted that. They adopted that within themselves. And they go, if she could do it, we could do it. And what you see is really what you get. We are that people, those people, all the time. And a lot of times people want to be around us because they can feel the energy. We're very protective over each other in a very mindful, comfortable way. But we have learned life is very, very short. And let's be real clear about who we are, and what we're doing. And that's what you see in them.
So we talk a lot about your past, and you have a phrase that I really love, one courageous step at a time.
Yes.
That is such a powerful phrase.
Yeah.
A lot of the people that you work with, they are in this full surrender mode. They're lost. They come to you. We talked about recently, you and I, about how the people that come to you, sometimes it's their last resort.
Yeah.
So how do you get a person that's just surrendered to the trauma, how it's surrendered to the abuse, the violence, the anger? How do you get that person to take the first step?
First of all, honestly, you have to create an atmosphere. You have to create an atmosphere where people feel comfortable to open up to talk. And that's one of the things that we said on one of the episodes of The Crown of Courage. To create an atmosphere for peace, create an atmosphere for miracles, create an atmosphere for people to be open. That's the first thing that you have to do. Because a lot of times these people are carrying these burdens and there is no atmosphere for it. And so they leave with it. But when you come into our experience and we allow you an opportunity to create this atmosphere that you can feel safe, that's when people let their guard down. That's when they're free to talk. That's when they're free to just let go and release all of the anxieties.
Safety is an important thing.
Absolutely.
When somebody walks into the Kennedy Austin Foundation for the first time, lost, bewildered, hurt, angry, what's the first thing you do for that person?
The first thing that I do is just watch them. I don't say much. I don't bombard them with words or conversation or try to force them into talking to me. Sometimes I let them sit and center their soul. Just be in that moment. And I may offer them a bottle of water, or I may offer them soda. Just sit. Most people don't want you to fix it. They just want you to listen. They need to know you're present. And I think that's what happens at the Kennedy Austin Foundation. We allow people to just be.
Your past is very important to your mission. Mm-hmm. Your past is very important to who you are today. What does the future hold for you?
I think my future is really bright. As a matter of fact, I think I need shades. No, honestly, the future holds a great deal of passion for me. The future hold a great deal of me experiencing a lot more about myself. That's what the future holds for me. I think that getting on this platform, being able to talk about my story, being able to engage, being able to reconnect with myself, that is huge for me. And I know if I could do that, then I could look beyond these walls, beyond the hurt, beyond the pain, and I could see a beautiful, bright future because I have come to know myself. And I'm determined to have a bright future. I'm determined.
You're well on the way.
Absolutely.
The Kennedy Austin Foundation helps so many people
Sure.
through this program, through things like the toy drive that I experienced a few
Yes.
weeks ago.
Yeah.
Every time I've experienced anything with Kennedy Austin Foundation, it's been filled with this energy, this vibrancy. What do you attribute that vibrancy to?
Life. Life. Abundant life. Abundant living. Living the life that you set up for yourself. That's what I attribute that to. To show people, yes, we're going through. Yes, we've had these things happen. Yes, I get it. But there's life after loss. There's life after the storm. There's life after all of these things. And you can experience it. You just have to be willing to put yourself out there, to be vulnerable in the face of fear, to be vulnerable and just open up and let life flow through you. And that's when you see a change.
An 8-year-old girl in Cleveland, Ohio, raising her siblings.
Yes.
Did you think you'd be here today?
Never. Never. I could not see beyond the pain. I could not see beyond the loss. I could not see beyond the abuse. I could not see beyond that. And not only that, there were no people in my life that told me that I could or would live beyond that. So it was a life that was stuck in reverse. And I always felt that I was always telling my story from behind until I finally made a decision one day. I'm not going to be a victim anymore. I'm not going to allow myself to keep talking about the past. There's a future for me. Every day that I wake up, I see good. I find good. I seek out good. And it's just been phenomenal. I never thought I would be sitting in this chair, ever.
I'm certainly glad you are.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, moving forward with the Kennedy Austin Foundation, what are some of the projects that we see in the future?
We have a lot of projects going on right now. We have a journaling class. It's called Right the Wrongs. You are the author of your story. You. You are the author of your story. You get an opportunity to talk about things in your past and right the wrongs. People want to talk about your story, but you tell your story in the first person. Those are the things that we're adding to the Kennedy Austin journaling, to be able to write out what you can't possibly speak. And that's really, really big for people to be able to have the ability to write, to journal. And it's really, really huge. Another thing that we're doing at the Kennedy Austin Foundation is we're giving people a platform to talk about their not only life story, but what would you like to see happen in your life? Where would you be 5 years, 10 years from now? Where do you see your life going? So in essence, you give people hope for a future. You give them an open door, a double door to go through. There's life after loss, but you have to have an audience for it, and you have to have a platform for it, and people will follow protocol.
So the platform, like the Crown of Courage,
Absolutely.
this is your platform, and it's
This is
it's
my
an amazing platform.
Absolutely.
The previous episodes, some of the other work we've done together, was life-changing for me. It is encouraging.
Yes.
It is powerful.
Yes, yes.
So what can this platform do for someone in a situation similar to yours?
Honestly, I know that this platform can allow you to have the confidence. It can allow you to be a real person, to tell a real life-changing story. Even if you think nobody is interested, there's somebody out there that needs to hear what you have to say. But you have to have courage, and you have to be in a position to want to talk about it. Just like when I first met Robert, the day that I was at the restaurant right here. I mean, I didn't have anything to lose. I just heard men talking behind a curtain. I couldn't see them, but I heard. And what I heard was one word: movie. That's all I heard. And once I heard it, I was so stirred in my spirit, I was like, I gotta go in. I gotta talk to this guy. And so you set the platform for people to be able to be the author of their own story. You set the platform to people to have faith in their story, to have faith and belief in what they have gone through. And that's exactly what this have done for me. It have given me and empowered me to say, it's okay to tell your story. It's okay. And that's exactly what this has done.
So that one courageous step towards Robert.
One. Yes.
That's all it took.
That's all it took. I mean, destiny. I didn't know destiny was behind the curtain. I just went there to eat and relax and chill out for the day, and all of a sudden, one word changed the essence of my entire life.
And brought you here.
One word.
And brought you here.
And brought me right here. And that can happen for other people. That can be an awakening. That can be an open door. That can be a sign to other people that when you get to the place where you're open and you're vulnerable and you're ready, guess what? The universe is calling. The door is open, and it manifests right there.
Walking through that door, what did it take for you?
Courage. In the face of fear. In the face of a pandemic. In the face of COVID-19. In the face of the riots after George King. The riots were high in California. And it was all of this stuff going on. But I had one shot. I heard what Robert said. He said movie. That's all I heard. I couldn't even see him, but I heard it. And I go, okay, it's my time. And thank God, look where I am.
Thank God. Your story has been told by you. Mm-hmm. Do you want others to tell your story?
No.
Why?
I think that I'm the author of my story. I think that I have the confidence, and I have the power, I have the passion to tell the story the way I want the story portrayed, even when I'm gone. I want people to see a woman of passion, a woman of courage, a woman that was not afraid, in the face of all of the stuff that I've gone through. I want to tell my story in the first person so people will get it. Sometimes when people tell your story for you, they leave out vital parts of the story. No, I need to talk about those parts. I need to tell about how vulnerable I was, how fearful I was, how afraid that I was. People need to hear it. And I think, again, we are the author of our story. And there are people out there that need to hear what you have to say.
Everyone has a story.
Everyone.
You've heard it said
Absolutely.
dozens of times.
Yes.
Is it anybody's story important, or is it everybody's story that's important?
I think everyone has a story. I don't think people feel that their story is important. That's between that person and the story. But I'm a firm believer, if you have something that you really want to talk about, that burning desire that's inside of your soul, that is your metaphor, that is your platform to put yourself in a position to say it. Now, people may have things that happen in life and they may say, well, that's really not important. I feel that everybody has an important story. But for you to say it, that's strictly between you and your conscience.
You talked earlier about being a community leader.
Mm-hmm.
Community involvement obviously is critical to what you do.
Sure.
To get your message out there, to get
Yes.
your story out there. What are some of the things that you and the Kennedy Austin Foundation are doing in the community to get your story heard?
Well, one of the things I made up my mind to engage myself with community events such as being involved with the city of Pomona, becoming a commissioner for Tri-City Mental Health, becoming a leader and a mentor to young children or to teenage women or to younger women. I made a decision that I was not going to just sit back and wait. I was going to engage myself and get involved, really jump in with both feet and get involved so people can know me and see me and trust me. And that's exactly what I've done. And I've made such an impact in the city, the Tri-City, Pomona, Laverne, and Claremont, because I wasn't afraid to go beyond the closed doors. I wasn't afraid to be at the right place at the right time. I wasn't afraid to ask people, even if they said no. People have said no to me all my life. It was familiar. But what about a yes? I didn't want to miss opportunity, so I put myself in a position. I put myself in a position to talk to people, and that's why I became a community leader, to show people, I don't want you to see me, I want you to see me with my actions.
Things are moving forward in amazing ways for you. You from a young 8-year-old girl being forced to raise her siblings to being a community leader today. It's a fantastic story.
Yes.
It is an amazing story. Somebody in your position, if you had one message for them, what would it be?
Nothing is impossible if you believe. Nothing is impossible if you believe. If you don't believe in yourself, nobody will believe in you. But if you believe, nothing can stop you. Nothing. I mean, this world has been set up for us our words are seeds. I love to garden. Words are seeds. And if you spread them out there, nothing is impossible if you believe in yourself. If you believe in your story, nothing shall be impossible and nothing shall be withheld from you. Nothing. At all. Ever.
Ethel, thank you. This has been a phenomenal conversation. I am grateful to be able to sit here in front of you. I'm grateful to be able to sit here in front of you and talk with you and share your story. It is an amazing gift, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Always happy to be here.
How did you meet Ethel Gardner?
Oh, how did I meet Ethel Gardner? Okay. I was at a restaurant. She tells the story beautifully. I'll try my best. We were at a restaurant, my production crew and I was working on a feature film, a narrative. And we're having a little production meeting. And then all of a sudden, we paused because we were pretty much wrapping it up. And I remember Ethel coming. She always says through these curtains, and there were curtains because of COVID. She came up to us, and I could see she was very nervous. And I didn't know what to expect from this person when she came up to us. And she said, I heard you talking about a film. Are you filmmakers? And I said, well, kinda. You know, we make films, but they're little independent, micro-budget films, nothing major, you know. And she said, well, I have a nonprofit organization, and I'm looking for someone to do a documentary on our nonprofit organization. And I said, I'm not really into making documentaries. And I said, but I'll take your business card, and give me a couple months. Give me a couple months to wrap up this film, and when it's all done, I will give you a call. And she said, fine. So she gave me her business card, and I remember going home that night and thinking about calling her. And I took a walk. It's where I kind of meditate. And I remember thinking, okay, well, I'll give her a call in a couple months and see what I can do for And then all of a sudden, this voice inside of me, this internal voice came inside of me and said, no, you're going to call her tomorrow. And I said, I fought it. No, I've got a lot on my plate. And whatever this nagging feeling is that's telling me that I need to call her the next day, I'm just going to ignore it. But I just couldn't ignore it. There was obviously a reason I needed to call her. And so I did. I called her up and I said, what exactly could I do for you? And that's how I met Ethel.
And what did you do for her?
Well, again, I never done a documentary. Didn't know even how to start a documentary. So I suggested we go to a studio that I knew, the studio that we're in right now. And I suggested that maybe we'll just see what happens. Maybe you just come visit the studio, take a look at it, and I'm not really sure what we can do, but let's just sit down and figure out how to tell your story in this studio. I really didn't have any concept whatsoever of a show. I didn't have a concept of anything, even how to make this movie happen. And we came, we saw it. She said, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. And I said, okay, well, let's book a date. And so we booked a date. We came in, and I said, let's just think of this as a rehearsal. Just sit right here, and I don't have anyone right now to interview you. We're just going to put the camera on you, see how comfortable you are in front of the camera, and just tell me a story. And I went in the back room, and I had a few of the cameras on her, and I said, just feel comfortable and act like the camera is me or a friend, and just talk to the camera. And I remember she sat down right here where I'm sitting, and she just told the most remarkable story. She didn't stop. She didn't pause. She just told her entire, not even her entire life story, just a part of her life story in that 1 hour. And I was recording it the whole time, and I thought to myself, well, that's it. We just did a show. I don't think I need anything other than you talking to this camera and telling your story. And she just blew me away. She was so gifted at telling a story that it just happened from there. It just happened from there.
And 5 episodes later, we're sitting here hearing your story of the story. Did you imagine that this would be the evolution of her story?
No, not at all. I really thought that was going to be it, the one episode. And at most, maybe we'd come back in again and we would do another one and just get a feel for, what else we could do. And I realized that she had so much to talk about that it would take 5 episodes to finish that. And that was what we talked about. We would do 6. We would do 5 episodes, and then the 6th episode would be sort of an encompassing of all the stories. And we wanted to create a documentary or something where someone could sit in one setting and get all 5 episodes and hear her entire life story in an hour show, an hour episode. And that's how Legacy happened. We talked about it. We said, we really didn't have that approach. The approach originally was just her telling her story. But people were asking, well, what did your son look like? Who are these people you're talking about? And she did not have many photographs of her mother and father, and she didn't have many photographs of things this time during her time. So we had to take what was existing and make that work. And at the end of it, everyone who sees it is just so impressed with how well both you and her had this wonderful conversation back and forth. And at the end of it, I realized, and I was just telling Ethel this story the other day, which was originally I had cut it all up so that it was more of a documentary style. And then I realized after talking to people that it flowed best when it was just this conversation between you and her. There was this real natural order of things, and it felt very natural. And people who saw both versions of it just said, no, this is something I've never seen before. This is even beyond an interview. This is like sitting and listening in on someone's conversation. And I thought we had something here. This is something that's not being done in documentaries or even TV shows, where someone will take the time to spend an hour having a conversation with somebody and hearing their life story. And that to me was very interesting.
So you said there was something here. What is that something?
Well, that something was something I've never seen before, which I said, you know, it's this very relaxed, very natural conversation that's happening. A lot of times people have a tendency of being very reserved with their story, don't want to talk about themselves. And honestly, with Ethel, I don't really have that problem. She really is able to express. But I'm now finding it, after we finished Legacy, that there is the possibility of telling more stories, more people. I bump into people every day. And if it wasn't for Ethel and if it wasn't for this project, I never would have happened upon the idea that every person has a legacy. Every person I bump into has a legacy. And I'll tell you, one of my biggest regrets in life was my grandmother. I was making movies all my life, and some of them were actually getting, seen, and she was impressed by this. And my grandmother has the most remarkable story. I mean, just an amazing story. And she one time came up to me and asked me to do her life story. Would you write my life story or make a movie about my life story? And I said, of course, absolutely. You have an amazing story, but life goes on. You go to work, you do other projects, and it's your grandmother. She's going to live forever. I can always go back and do this life story. And then all of a sudden you realize, no, that's not how it works. And she passed away. And my opportunity to tell her life story went away. And it's never going to come back. And I could interview my cousins. I could interview my mother. I could interview all the family members. But it will never be as potent as my grandmother sitting in this seat, telling her life story as it happened. And I started realizing when I did the show with Ethel that in a way I was sort of doing that. I was sort of telling my grandmother's life story. They are very parallel. Ethel's story and my grandmother's story. My grandmother lost her son when he was 17 as well in the Vietnam War. She went through a time of homelessness. She had a very epic story, very similar to Ethel's. And I felt this completion when I worked with Ethel, that I kind of fulfilled my promise to my grandmother to tell her story in telling Ethel's story. And then you realize anybody who will sit in this seat right here will have a story that somehow, some way will resonate with somebody. If somebody's not able to tell their story, someone who will sit in this seat will tell their story for you. In their own way, they're going to tell a life story, and you're going to see your own story, or you're going to see your grandmother's story, or you're going to see your mother's story by someone else telling their story. Sitting right here in this seat.
A couple of times you've mentioned the word legacy. What is the legacy here? What are we talking about?
Well, again, I think it goes back to what is a legacy. It is a person's life story. It is all the things they've done, both positive and negative, in this world. The impact that they've made in this world. There's many words that you can use for that, but I think legacy tells you that it's the full roundedness of a person's life. It is the both, like I said, both the highs and lows. And I think that's important. The other day we were talking to my daughter, and I realized that we're very open with my daughter. We tell her our life story, both all the positives and negatives. But I was a school teacher for a while, and I can tell you a lot of parents used to come up to me and tell me, I don't want my daughter to know about the time I did this. I don't want my daughter to know my life story. Or I don't want, they try to keep things secret from them in hopes that they can be a hero to their child. But I think that's a disservice. I think everyone should be willing to talk about the whole spectrum of life. And yes, it's not always pretty. And in fact, sometimes the not pretty stuff are the things that need to be talked about. Kids learn from that. People learn from that. There's I still believe that 70-year-old people can still hear something like this and say, I want to change a part of my life because I heard something like that. And I never heard it before. I never heard someone talk about those things before. This is the first time I'm hearing it. I think Ethel does a great job with that. But I do believe there's a world out there of people who should be sitting in this seat talking about their life story, because I think it's going to impact people who can't sit in this seat.
That oh wow moment, that could have been me moment.
Right. And it also serves as like a what if. I could have gone down that path, but this person's telling me what it's like to have gone down that path. And it might have been great, it might have been awful, but now I at least get to experience a little bit of that. And I think it's a service.
Moving forward from Ethel's story, what's in store?
Again, what we're looking to do now is have other people sit in this seat and you talk to them about their life. Have that conversation with them. Let them know that it's okay to talk about yourself. It's okay to tell your legacy to the world, and that you're important. You're important. You know, we always think that the Bill Gates are important and the President of the United States are important, but they're just people. They're just people like you and I. And just as much as their story is important, so is your story. So is the story of whoever. It doesn't matter what you did in life. You still lived a life, and your life is important, and sharing your life is important. We all have a story. You hear it all the time. I want to hear that story. You want to hear that story. And I do believe that there are millions of people who want to hear that story as well.
And millions of people that have a story to tell.
And a million people who have a story to tell. And I would love to facilitate that. I think both Ethel, you, and I would love to do that for people. You know, I think that we found a calling here to facilitate that.
You and I have talked about Ethel a couple of times since my involvement in this program, and her story is fascinating. Her story is unbelievably fascinating. And what would you say about, maybe not the future of Ethel's story, but the future about storytelling in general?
Well, I think that we live in an age where things need to be, you know, explosive. We live in an age where people get bored very easily. And I believe that what we need more than anything, and we don't know we need it until you actually sit and watch something like Ethel's story, is simplicity. We don't need these complexities in storytelling. We just need the source to sit down and be honest and tell you what they've experienced in life. And it doesn't take, I'm more excited when I hear Ethel's story than watching the Avengers. I would rather listen to an amazing story of an amazing person who is just like you and I. Didn't run a billion-dollar company, didn't create a vaccine, didn't cure cancer. We can't all cure cancer. We can't all create a vaccine that's going to save the world, and we can't all be billionaires. But we all do live this life on this planet together. And we all have a story to tell. And to me, that's more fascinating, and I'm hoping people will find it fascinating as well, than any movie, than any giant story that's fictional. We waste our time so much watching fictional stories that don't amount to anything. Why not watch an inspirational story? Why not watch somebody's real life story and be impacted by that? That's real. It's honest. And when someone is being honest, they deserve the right to be heard. When someone is willing to be vulnerable and sit in this chair and tell you their life story, I believe they deserve to be heard.
And the vehicle that you're using to tell that story, that we're using to tell that story, is legacy.
Is legacy. Simple. Simple. I remember when I first decided to do this, I watched a bunch of documentaries to get ready for it. And I realized how cold documentaries can feel. Even when they go out and do recreations of scenes, or they go out and they do interviews from really nice places, it always seems sterile and cold. And it was one of the reasons why I brought you into the project, because we've known each other forever. And I knew that you would be perfect for this the moment it happened, because there is that conversation that happens. You know, there's that whole, you have a way to make someone feel very comfortable on this side of the seat. You know, you don't feel intimidating. It feels very natural. I feel, even Ethel, when she sits here, it's like talking to a friend. And that's what we want. Something as simple as that. We're just talking with a friend. And it's almost like Ethel at that restaurant listening in on a conversation. you get the opportunity to listen in on this conversation. And it's nice and it's loud and it's clear, but most important, simple. No extravagance, no explosions, no, none of this. It is what it is. It is a person sharing their life story with a friend.
The good, the bad, and the otherwise.
The good, the bad, and the otherwise. And you know, we so oftentimes want to talk just about the good, all the great things that we've accomplished in life. But equally as important are all the things that where we failed. Because we could teach people from that.
That makes us who we are.
It makes us who we are, and we shouldn't be scared of that. We should be vulnerable, you know, and I know that I do that with my child. I do it with people I know all the time. I'll tell you it all. I have no problem with that. Because, again, as equally as important as all those achievements that you've made, all the mistakes you made will also teach somebody something. It also prevents people from making those mistakes. It can. Or they might still make the mistakes and say, well, I wasn't the only one. Things happen, and that's okay.
Life is not perfect.
Life is not perfect. That's okay. It's not supposed to be perfect. How boring would life be if it was perfect? If we lived forever and life was perfect and peachy keen, how boring. What would be the point? What would be the point of living if that's all that was, is just living in paradise perfection? We need that. We need to have some of that darkness with the light.
A farmer cannot produce a crop without first partaking of the fruit. I cannot tell you a story that I have not been through. I can't sit here with this much passion, with this much conviction, and tell you a story if I had not partaken of it first. The loss of a child, journaling my way to hope and healing. That's what got me there. That was the door that was open for me. And I took it.